Hello and welcome to another episode of Trojan Dash. I'm joined once again by Nathan Ackerman, and as always, I'm Sam Arslanian. Nathan, how are you doing?
As Pac-12 games across the conference have been canceled this year, I've sort of wondered what our fellow Dash co-hosts from other schools do when there are no games to talk about.
Yep, USC had its first one taken away by COVID this past weekend, but nonetheless, it was a very eventful week in college football as a whole, and especially the Pac-12. A lot of great Pac-12 games. You had Stanford and Cal nail biter. Stanford coming out on top, 24-23. Colorado rescheduled against San Diego State, beat them by 10. Utah and Washington was a great game. Washington just coming out on top, 24-21, and now Washington's ranked 23. So there you go. And then Arizona and UCLA took it to Arizona as we all expected. And the one we didn't expect, that maybe no one expected. Pac-12 after dark, anything can happen. What were they at the time? Number 9, Oregon, losing. Number 9 in the AP poll, number 15 in the college football playoffs rankings. Lost to Oregon State, 41-38. Didn't see that one coming.
Hey, I want to shout out the Beavs for getting a vote in this week's AP poll. They come in at number 35 with one vote for the top 25.
Woo.
I think the Beavs got a little slept on. So proud of the Beavs. Happy.
Hey man, the Beavs look good. I'm gonna say Jamar Jefferson looks like a baller. Sucks that Jebbia got hurt on that second to last play there. The second to last play of that drive when they scored. Jebbia looks good. Jamar Jefferson looks good. The Beavs look good, man. I wouldn't be surprised if they do some things to shake up the North a little bit more. But at this point, does it really matter? I feel like you got two teams that are in the running for it, and it's basically Oregon or Washington at this point. And we'll see what it comes down to. But I want to talk about who the best team in the Pac-12 is right now. The way I see it, and I'm going to start because I'm hosting today. I see 3 teams, okay? And I don't think really any team is deserving of it right now. I see Oregon, I see USC, and I see Washington. Oregon just lost to Oregon State. I don't know how you say they're the best team in the Pac-12 after that. Despite the fact that they are still Oregon. But I want to see them play. I want to see that Washington game bad. I am excited for that game. USC is kind of the same thing, except they've won every game, right? So you have a USC team who's 3-0. They've played Utah, who got off to a slow start. They looked a lot better this past week against Washington. So, same thing with USC. USC got out to a slow start, so did Utah. The difference is USC just had 2 games before they played Utah, and Utah had their first game against USC. And then you have Washington, who looks solid, but I still want to see a little bit more down the road. If I'm remembering correctly, they played a couple tight games earlier this season, right? I mean,
they were close with Oregon State.
They were close with Oregon State, yeah. So I mean, yeah, and they beat Arizona, and then obviously that close Utah game. So really, I don't know that there's a clear-cut winner, and I think it's a toss-up between USC and Washington. And I think that's just because we don't know enough. I think USC has the potential to be the best team in the Pac-12. I also think Washington does. Oregon, it's kind of out of the conversation unless they come back and rebound and just pound Washington when they play in the last week before the championship. But Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Well, okay, so Oregon's definitely out of the conversation. Through the first couple weeks, Oregon, they were number 15 in the CFP, number 10, number 9, top 10 in the AP. But I mean, their defenses just looked bad all year. They allowed, I think, 14 points to Stanford, which is fine. But then they allowed 29 to Washington State, 35 to UCLA, or 38, 35, I think, to UCLA, and then they just allowed 41 to Oregon State. So I've needed to see more from Oregon this year, and I think the loss of Oregon State pretty much takes them out of the conversation for best team in the Pac-12 right now, of course, thanks to COVID change. Washington, to me, I was slow to buy in because I put a lot of stock into that first game against Oregon State when it was close toward the end. I think they won by, I think it was within one possession. I think they maybe started to pull away late, but and they were in control of that game pretty late. But I think it was still within one score. And Oregon State might have actually won that game if it weren't for a few bad spots within the 10-yard line, and they're probably going to take the lead by that. So I was kind of hesitant to buy in on Washington, and then they destroyed Arizona, which it's Arizona, sure, but they still had a 37-0 lead at some point, and that's impressive against pretty much any team. So then I was like, okay, Washington's pretty solid. And then I was kind of, part of me was rooting for the Utes to pretty much stomp Washington so that SC could clearly emerge as the best team in the Pac-12. And in the first half, when it was 21-0, I was like, okay, I've been proven right, or at least USC has been proven right. And then in the second half, it was an entirely different ballgame. They won 24-0 in the second half to come out with a 24-21 victory. And so I'm chalking that first half up to kind of a fluke. And then in hindsight, now that we know that Oregon State is actually kind of decent, the first game doesn't look so bad. I mean, they won it, but the fact that it was close doesn't look that bad. So right now, I'd say I've seen more out of Washington than USC, definitely more out of Washington than Oregon. So right now, I would give Washington the slight nod. You know me as the guy that's going to take USC over pretty much any team in the country. I would probably, you probably think I'd take USC over Alabama, which is possible, but for now, I'm going to take. Oh my God! For now, I'm going to say Washington right now has looked the best in the Pac-12. I think things are going to change. Prediction time. I think USC is going to win the Pac-12 championship. So again, that could also change. But right now, it's hard to give. And I think USC should probably be ranked higher too, because I think that they're a better team. But as far as who looked better early on in the season, you got to get it wrong.
I think the other interesting thing to say is that going into that Pac-12 championship, we're going to know who the favorite is from the end of the season, right? If it's Oregon that gets in there, it's going to be the South team, USC. If it's Washington that ends up cleaning up and they put a win over Oregon, I think it's going to be Washington. I don't really see any way that Oregon goes into this as the favorite. So I'm going to give Washington the slight edge right now as the favorite in the Pac-12. But do I think USC can beat them? Absolutely. Do I think USC can beat Oregon? Absolutely. Do I think Washington and Oregon can both beat USC? Absolutely. I don't think I think you got three teams that you got to worry about. Now, the other thing is, can USC get spoiled, right? You got an undefeated team in Colorado, and we'll talk about that cancellation later, and how much it comes into play, really. But you have Wazoo. Wazoo's familiar to playing spoiler. You look back at 2017, week 3 or 4 or something like that. That was going to be a year. Sam Darnold's last year. Wazoo plays spoiler in Pullman. Now, granted, this game's not in Pullman, and USC doesn't have to play in 20-degree weather, which they do not like doing very often. But I still think Washington State and UCLA are going to be 2 tough games for USC down the road. It's hard to say that because you want to say USC is a good team. They're going to be able to handle these 2 teams that are less than them, right? But it's USC, and we've seen what they're capable of doing in terms of almost blowing games. Granted, they haven't blown any games yet, but you should be beating Arizona by a couple more points than you did, right?
Yeah. I mean, you love to dwell on the fact that Washington State spoiled USC's season in 2017. But let's not forget about my, I think, freshman year, 2018, when Washington State was very good. They were top 10. I think they only had 1 loss all season, maybe 2, and one of those losses came on a Jay Tufele blocked field goal.
Which they were going to lose. You can't.
Nathan,
you can't rely on. I know, but you can't rely on a blocked field goal to beat teams, especially if you're talking about being that team, right? You can't rely on that. You got to be able to convincingly put these teams away early.
I mean, tell that to Stanford, right? They blocked two kicks against Cal. If one of those goes through, they probably.
Yeah.
Block kicks are a part of the game, man.
I know they're a part of the game, but I mean, did USC deserve to win that game?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad we agree on this. Yeah, I feel like you get really hyped up about things and we start talking through things and you come back down to earth a little bit more.
Hey, I'm just trying to be the eternal optimist that I am.
Oh, I know you are. Believe me.
Kind of my
I'll be the pessimist here. Okay, let's move on to topic 2.